Did I do something? It may be me. Start with that. Let me see what we got.
You work on it, and I'm going to start talking. Hey, everybody. What's going on? Crystal Wright here. I am here today with Victor Parker. He is the Deputy Associate Administrator for the United States Small Business Administration. And he is in charge of the Office of Field Operations. I learned that Victor is in charge of everything. In fact, in his role, he's responsible for the SBA's 68 field district offices, which are the point of delivery for most of the SBA's services and programs. He provides policy guidance and oversight to the regional administrators and district directors in implementing SBA goals and objectives. He's responsible for solving problems, and that's why we're here today. Victor, it's wonderful to have you here today. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. Hey, so for those of you, great. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Crystal Wright. I'm the author of the Hair, Makeup, and Fashion Styling Career Guide, and I am coming to you from Liverpool, England. I am coming to you from my second home. And our session title today is Where's the Money? A fireside chat with Victor Parker. So again, Victor, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Crystal. Glad to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. So Victor, in the words of Tom Cruise, show me the money. The question on everyone's mind right now is, where is the money and how can we get access to it? And the floor is now yours.
Wow. Thank you, Crystal. Hello, everybody. It's good to have all of you online with us today. It is really an exciting opportunity for me, not only to share a little bit about where we are in terms of some of the SBA funding that you've been hearing about in the news, and hopefully try to distill a few myths that are out there, as well as other resources that we can leverage as we all work through this pandemic. I think one of the things I would say is that for the African American community in particular, we have been especially hard hit during this pandemic because of the nature of our businesses and the industries that we touch, and how they've been impacted by the various stay-at-home orders and safer-at-home orders, and as well as the recovery piece is going to be impacted depending on where we are because of how those are being lifted and the next steps going forward. So first and foremost, probably all of you have heard of the Paycheck Protection Program associated with the CARES Act, which is a joint program that the SBA and the Treasury have been delivering. Starting April 3rd was when the first round of funds were distributed. The good news and the most important thing, if you hear nothing else from me today, is the fact that there is still money available. The Paycheck Protection Program is not out of money. As a matter of fact, and I have not checked this morning, as of last week, we had about $120 billion, that's billion with a B, left over. That's still in that appropriation. So there's absolutely, positively money available for the Paycheck Protection Program. And let me kind of go over some of the highlights of that program, because 9 times out of 10, every single one of you will be eligible for this program. I think one of the biggest things that I've heard over the course of the last 2 or 3 weeks is people feel that if I don't have a traditional W-2, if I don't, have a series of 1099s, if I'm not a traditional employee, where I have a business as a corporation, I'm not eligible, and people disqualify themselves. Do not do that. This program is designed to take care of self-employed, independent contractors, nonprofit organizations, whether you're a veteran organization, women-owned businesses. It covers the gamut. If you're an Uber driver, everybody for the most part, if you are in any type of self-employment or independent contracting business or a business of any form, fashion, or manner that you include as a part of your income, you are eligible for this program. So the highlights of the program is you take those funds and they are to be used primarily for payroll. It could be your own payroll, so you don't have to have a payroll. So if you have assistants, if you own your own shop and the rest of the stylists are all independent contractors, that doesn't mean you can't apply for this program. You can absolutely apply for this program, as well as the stylists that work with you, as well as your assistants if they're not on your particular payroll. So by all means, I encourage you to apply for the program. Now, the key to the Paycheck Protection Program is you must apply through an SBA participating lender. So SBA traditionally has several programs that we do on a regular basis, independent of the CARES Act funding that we have, through our lending partners. The good news is, and many of you, again, may not have a business account with a traditional bank, or you may not have a strong banking relationship with your particular banking institution. That is okay, because what we have done at SBA is we have added, in addition to our traditional lenders, we have added over 700 additional lenders across the country that are now participating in the Paycheck Protection Program. So you can go to a credit union, you can go to a community bank, you can go to a variety of different institutions to obtain these funds. And the main thing that I, again, want to emphasize is make sure you leverage SBA.gov. SBA.gov has a list of all the active lenders by state that you can go to. The other piece of it is that you probably have heard a little bit about is CDFIs. CDFIs are not traditional lending institutions, and they're traditional lending institutions, but they're not deposit institutions. So you may not have an account with a CDFI, or you may not be familiar with a CDFI, but we have also provided funding for CDFIs so that they can also provide and participate in the Paycheck Protection Program.
So can you give us an example of what a CDFI is? Like a name recognition?
So CDFIs, and they vary from state to state. One of them is and you may have heard about this through Magic Johnson's foundation. He is working with, I believe it's MBE. It's MBE Capital Partners, if I'm not mistaken. That is an example of a non-traditional CDFI. There are several of them. Again, on the list that we have on our website, there will be a list of all the institutions, including the CDFIs. One thing that I do want to point out, however, we do have to be mindful. There are folks out there that like to take advantage of this particular situation we're in. So in the event that you are contacted by any type of entity or organization that says, hey, I can get you a paycheck protection loan, and you haven't heard from them, it didn't really come from a reliable source, check the SBA website, or even more importantly, as you mentioned, Crystal, there are 68 district offices across the country. You can contact that district office, and that district office can verify that that particular institution is actually an approved Paycheck Protection Program lender. We really want you to do that on the front end as early as possible, especially before you start uploading your tax returns or start sending any of your PII information, your personally identifiable information. Make sure that you are actually engaged with a reputable lender. We don't want anybody to get caught with a predatory lender. Some red flags: if a lender or someone approaches you and says, oh, for $500, I can get your whole loan package processed for you and get you a PP loan, that's an automatic red flag. This is a federal program. You should not have to pay any money to actually apply for this program. So if they start asking you for a lot of money up front, et cetera, that's a red flag that there's something going on, and you may want to check with SBA. The other thing is, I recognize that many of you, we're independent contractors. We're sole proprietors. We don't have an accounting staff that we can go and fill out this application that we can go and run to. There are small business development centers and women's business centers all across the country that can help you for free to actually help you with the application. Make sure that you get your package and your information in correctly. Again, if you go to SBA.gov, there is a place that will say local resources. You can put in your zip code, and those folks that are close to you, those women's business centers, small business development centers, and the district office, all their contact information will pop up in that list. So you can find them, again, all over the country. Most states have one district office. However, New York, California, Florida, Ohio, there are multiple district offices because we're so big. So in Texas is another example. California, for example, has 6 district offices. So there are district offices all up and down California, all over Texas spread out, that can help you. We are, although a lot of us are working remotely, the district offices are opening. We are functioning, and the same thing with our small business development centers and women's business centers. I know some of them haven't reopened yet, depending on what state you're in, but we are certainly capable of helping you virtually, conference calls, whatever we need to do to make sure you get the supplies. The key to the Paycheck Protection Program right now is the fact that it is due to stop accepting applications June 30th. So you don't have a lot of time to get your application. Right. A lot of money, but there is a window. Of course, this is ever evolving. It changes every day. That's part of my routine now every morning is to check to see whether Congress has changed or the Treasury Department has changed any of the rules or regulations. But as of right now, it is set to, if you will, sunset, for lack of a better term, on June 30th. So I really want to make sure that we're proactive in getting our applications in, having those conversations with lenders as soon as possible, because June 30th is right around the corner. And that's the last date that lenders can actually put in those applications to get processed. The good news is that we have given all of those lenders what we call delegated authority, which means they do all of the underwriting, all of the processing for your application, including the approval, is done directly with the lender. So it is not a process where they have to look at it, then they've got to send it to SBA, and then we've got to go and negotiate. All that's been put away. It is absolutely designed so that the lender can get those funds to you very quickly. They do have to submit your application to SBA. And the reason they do that is because that's how we monitor the appropriation. The amount of money that Congress allotted for us to lend, we've got to be able to control that. So the lenders do have to submit your application to SBA, but it is not for any type of a reapproval process. It is the easiest way to explain it is so we can make sure we're balancing the checkbook, if you will, and make sure that we don't overspend the appropriation. But again, there is over $100 billion out there. So please, please, please take advantage of that.
Well, Victor, you asked a lot of questions that I have written down, so I have made up questions of my own. Okay,
let's go.
One of the things that I hear people asking about is, can I still apply for the PPP if I have not yet filed my 2019 taxes?
Yes, you can, because obviously the IRS gave us all until July to file our taxes. So you would then use your last year's tax return for your tax information. So you may absolutely do that.
Okay, wonderful. From the time you fill out your application with one of these SBA lenders, how long does it take for you to get an answer back, whether it's yes or no?
So that varies from lender to lender. We're kind of out of the program when it comes to that piece of it because we gave the lenders a delegated authority. So it really varies on the size of the lender, the number of applications. Again, I would encourage folks. A lot of times, some of the larger banking institutions where they don't have the bandwidth, so to speak, to actually engage as frequently. They do everything is going to be done online. It may take a little bit longer because it's going through an automated process. Community banks tend to be a little bit more, nimble in order to actually have a person that you can talk to. I will say that they are moving quickly because of the June 30th deadline. And I know that I have spoke with many of the SBA lenders where they're even having folks work on the weekends. And I know that they added additional staff to have access to the SBA system so they can make sure that those loans are getting in our system as quickly as possible. To give you an average would be rough, but I would say that given the fact that today is the June 14th, if you submit an application today knowing that June 30th is the deadline, I would give it 5 business days, and I'm pretty confident if everything is in and there are no follow-up questions that you should be able to hear from them pretty quickly.
Okay. Should the people that are listening to this today and are saying, okay, I'm going to go ahead and go for it, I'm going to go ahead and submit one of these applications, is there a checklist somewhere on the SBA.gov website where they can get a checklist so they can gather together their paperwork?
So there is a copy of the actual application on the SBA website. So you can look at that application in advance before contacting the lender to kind of get a sense of what it is you need to get in terms of your paperwork. You can also, again, if you have any concerns, I encourage you to leverage one of the small business development centers. You may hear of them of SBDCs. I try to de-government acronym things when I explain it to folks. But if you hear SBDC, what they're talking about is small business development centers. And I would really encourage you to go to them. The district offices, SBA funds those small business development centers. They're SBA funded organizations. And our district offices engage with them on a regular basis. So anything that they cannot answer, they have access to my staff out in the field to make sure that they can answer any of those questions and help to move that along.
Okay, that's awesome. So one of the questions that I have is, what if, because I remember when the paycheck, when it first came out and I started reading the rules of it, it sounded like to me that if you were like me and you work with a lot of freelancers who are outside of the U.S., and so everybody that I pay, I'm paying people that are working for me. Let's say somebody might be in the Philippines, somebody might be India, somebody might be in New York. But the people that are outside of the U.S., is it true that makes me ineligible for it?
Absolutely not. So what we're looking at is, and if you're paying yourself from these proceeds, that's the key. Mm-hmm. If it is a source of income for you as a sole proprietor or as an independent contractor, that is what we're trying to do. The Paycheck Protection Program is designed for making sure that we continue to provide you with income during this pandemic and as we respond and recover to the pandemic. So if you are getting funds, regardless of where they're coming from, you are still indeed eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program, where it becomes a little bit more of a job, but it's not a challenge. It's a challenge, but it's not impossible. Is the fact that you've got to make sure that you can document that you have actually obtained that income. So that's where it gets a little bit tricky, because obviously you may or may not get a 1099, obviously, from an outside source. However, if you can show based on your tax returns, based on your operating budget, the things that you do, that you show how you leverage your income, your expenses, and how you pay yourself, and the proceeds and how you use those proceeds. That is the package that you would put together to show that that's what that income is used for. Portions of that income goes to your salary as the independent contractor or the business owner. Okay, so let me ask you another question now. What about people who are already taking advantage of the unemployment? What if you're already getting unemployment, or your unemployment is about to run out? Can you then still take advantage of it, or is that a no-no? So you will have to, so then again, it becomes a situation with the use of proceeds. So you can absolutely apply. What will happen, the forgiveness portion is based on you using that percentage towards your actual payroll. So if you're saying that you actually received unemployment benefits, you can't have double use of proceeds. So during the time frame that you accepted the unemployment, you cannot use those funds from the PPP program, saying that is a part of your forgiveness during that same time period. So it becomes a little bit complicated, but the short answer to your question is that does not eliminate you from being eligible. You will have to make some adjustments in terms of how you calculate the forgiveness portion. And again, that's where our advisors and your lender will be able to help you.
Okay, that is awesome. So you already talked about some of the scams that are out there, and thank you for that. Tell us a little bit more about the Magic Johnson MBE partnership. What is that about?
So a lot of foundations, and Magic Johnson is one of them, have been partnering with many of the community development financial institutions, which, CDFIs that I talked about earlier. And so basically that is a partnership that Magic Johnson is working directly with that CDFI, but the CDFI is actually managing the Paycheck Protection Program. So that group is an approved SBA PPP lender. So that is how they're working together. And so a lot of folks are stepping up. It is such a good feeling to see many of the folks in the community stepping up to partner with our CDFIs. One of the things about CDFIs, and people, obviously, unless you're really in that space, you don't pay much attention to it. They're really the mission-based lenders, as I call them, across the country. Many other community banks are. Other banks are doing mission-based things too. I don't want to just disparage anybody else. But CDFIs really are focused 99.999% on mission-based lending. And some of them focus on housing, some focus on small business, some do both. There are various things that they focus on. But the ability to help those lenders to engage the community, they're really the ones, as I call them, boots on the ground in our respective communities. They're smaller institutions, and a lot of times, they may not be able to produce the big, $10 million loan. At the same time, however, they certainly can provide the loans that are well needed in the community. And so the other thing I really want to also caution folks on is, you may approach a lender and they say they are out of money. Many banking institutions, and that could be larger banks or even some of the smaller community banks, within their own operation plan, if you will, they may have a limit in terms of how many or what the dollar amount is they're going to do for a Paycheck Protection Program. So if you run into a lender that is not accepting applications or no longer producing loans, as I indicated before, the money is still out there. It's just not that particular bank. So I don't want you to get lender fatigue, but I certainly don't want you to think that, well, because this bank X is out of money, that the money is gone. The money is definitely not gone. And I guarantee you, we did not lend out since last Thursday $100 billion. So by all means, continue to look at some of those other non-traditional banks that I referenced to before. But certainly if the bank that you go to is not accepting applications or not accepting new applications, if you're not a client, some of these nuances that people experienced, I know, particularly during round one of funding, please again contact your district office, an SBA district office, because we can certainly point you in the right direction in terms of which lenders are still accepting applications and help you move along with that process, particularly given that June 30th deadline.
Right. So for those of you who just joined us, because I know we've been throwing around some of these acronyms and you may not know what that means. Victor, tell them again what a CDFI is, what that stands for. Okay,
sure. That is a community development financial institution. So those are institutions that are really focused on mission-based community entities and organizations. A lot of times they focus on housing. We have, several housing challenges in many of our cities and states. They focused on small business lending. Sometimes they look at a variety of different social and community type needs throughout at a local level. So they usually cover a very small territory. They're not like a traditional bank that, may have branches all over the place. They may have one or two offices in an area, and that's it. They're not really depository institutions. So it's not like you would go and open up a bank account at a CDF. Right. CDFIs are really there to provide capital to a variety of different organizations. A lot of times they fund a lot of our faith-based organizations is another example that they would use.
Right, right. So I'm sure one of the questions that people have is, what about the payback?
Yes.
How does that work? If you give me $20,000, am I going to have to pay it back? When am I going to have to pay it back? What's going to be the interest rate on it? Because we keep hearing that once you've gotten it, if you use it for the right things, that you don't have to pay it back. Is that true?
That is true. So there is the forgiveness portion, as you may hear a lot in the news, and you will see that on SBA's website as well. So there is actually what they call a forgiveness application that you will have to fill out once you're funded. That will go through and calculate what is forgivable on your loan. So the primary focus of the loan, again, is to cover payroll and cover your expenses. So once you are funded, you will have to demonstrate that you use those proceeds to actually fund payroll, even if it's payroll to yourself. So you will need to show how you have done it. So if you're self-employed and you do self-employment tax, you do your SECA, your self-employment filings. If you write yourself a check, you will need to provide that proof that you have actually used those funds for your payroll. Now, if you don't use all of it for payroll, there's still some expenses that you can use that will still count towards the forgiveness. If it is the rent, if you own your shop, for example, and you still have to pay rent to the landlord, those are expenses that are still accounted towards the forgiveness portion. Obviously, if you're using those funds to go pay off some other debt, something that has nothing to do with your business, then that becomes a problem. If there is a portion that is not deemed forgivable, then you have 2 years as of now, and again, they've been pushing to extend it, but as of right now, it's 2 years at a 1% interest rate for the unforgivable portion.
Wow, that's amazing.
So it is unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at the forgiveness portion, does get a little complicated because the document is trying to cover all types of organizations. That's one of the things that I noticed about the document. The forgiveness portion is fine if you are a traditional manufacturing corporation, for example. It makes a lot of sense. However, if you are an independent contractor, for example, there may be some things that seem a little bit awkward to you. Again, we can help in terms of our small business development centers and district offices to help you fill that out. So don't let that be a deterrent. It is a document that is, and quite frankly, it's going to probably continue to evolve as well. But there are folks to help you with that document. So, don't let that piece of it discourage you from applying and accepting those funds to help you get your business, get our community back rolling, and again, take care of your colleagues, the folks that are in your shop, and your assistants. Everybody could really benefit from this program if we just take advantage of it and make sure. I mean, it's 100% guaranteed by SBA, and so that helps navigate all the other things that kind of go along with collateral and some of the other concerns that I know a lot of people have.
Well, this has just been some amazing information. And I know that you are not maybe at this moment an entrepreneur, but I'm sure that with all that you deal with and setting these programs up to make sure that we can be whole and remain whole, what advice would you give to someone, an entrepreneur now, moving forward? Like, what should business owners have learned from this moment? And how can we move forward better prepared than we might have been for this?
That's an excellent question. One of the things that we take for granted is, preparing for disasters, and what we have traditionally done. If you are in the Gulf states, you prepare for hurricanes, and you kind of get complacent and only just worrying about that particular natural disaster, or we just get kind of complacent if we're in the Midwest. We may just prepare for tornadoes or snowstorms in the East, earthquakes in California, et cetera. But we don't do enough. I mean, we think about the immediate thing, which is important. The safety of our team members, our colleagues, our family, and our community is obviously the priority. But you've also got to have something prepared for your business. You've got to figure out, what do you do if indeed the power is out and you don't have access to your computer, your records, you don't have access to your insurance policy, all these different things that we kind of look at from our home perspective. We should be doing the same thing for our business. And I think we have to be a bit more proactive in looking at and having that plan for our business. And I think this really has given us an opportunity to learn how to reinvent ourselves and how to pivot going forward and how to be creative in how we deliver our services going forward. And it's going to take a little while. I think when, one of the things that we've run into, even with the Paycheck Protection Program, as we launched that program back in April, it was a brand new program. It wasn't something that was sitting on the shelf and we just had to dust it off. I mean, we literally, as an agency with SBA and Treasury, with Treasury right at our side, had to absolutely build this program from the ground up. I mean, it was basically signed into law, and it's like, okay, now get this rolled out and implemented. And we did that in a very short period of time. It was, but the one thing that I would encourage folks to do is look at how you're going to deliver your services going forward. How, this is going to be, in reality, and I think we've all noticed this now, this is definitely going to be a marathon and not a sprint. I think we kind of thought that, by June, everything would be back to normal. I think the June 30th deadline, I think there was a sense that we would be back to some sense of normalcy at that point. And some places are at different stages, just like it rolled out. But think about, how are you going to schedule your clients now? Are you going to have schedule appointments? And I know the barbershop, we don't like appointments. We like to come in and sit down and socialize, and that, that's our bonding time, but, are we going to have to separate out when our other stylists are coming into the shop? Are we going to have to start scheduling by appointment, spreading them out? Are we going to have people wait in the car? All the different things that you're going to have to do as we ramp back up, start planning that out. It's doable, but it's something that I think as business owners and people, as we start up, we really need to think about that. What types of things do we need to do to make sure we're protecting the health and safety of our employees and our clients? Are we going to, prepare? Do we need to have masks on site? Are we going to have folks working, putting plexiglass in certain places where you can just buy those and stand them up? All these things we need to consider in conjunction with all the other emergency things that we do. And the other thing of it is, I think we've learned is it's important to have some sort of relationship with our lending institutions. We don't do a very good job of doing it. Half time we don't even go in the bank anymore, and we're not encouraged to in a lot of cases. Doing it at the ATM, everything is online. What I have noticed is from a lot of business owners that I've talked to and where we've had some challenges is they actually knew that person at that bank that they were working with. And we've been able to actually get on the phone with the client and with that lender to walk through whatever challenges there may be with that particular application. But the way that happened was because that particular borrower knew somebody in that bank that they had worked with, even if they just go in and say hello once a month, just so that there is some type of connection. I mean, it doesn't mean you got to sit there and, go to lunch or do anything extravagant, but it's just a matter of going in and just doing a lightweight check-in to say, hey, how are you? My business has really been busy. We're in, whatever's may be going on. So they kind of have a sense of who you are and what your business is like. And what opportunities you've had.
I absolutely agree with you. In fact, I wrote down, because in one of the things we were asking you, what is a relationship? What do you mean by starting a relationship with a bank? And I agree. It is that simple. Introduce yourself to the manager. Be friendly. Say hello to everyone. Start remembering people's names. It can make a huge difference when you need something from that bank, and you call up and you can say on the phone and say, well, remember me? I'm the lady that always comes in. And they go, oh, yeah. Hold on. Let me get somebody for you. It really can be just that easy in terms of developing a relationship.
Absolutely. I mean, it doesn't, it's an extra few minutes out of your time, and sometimes, it's worth standing in line and taking the deposit in. To go in there, the tellers know you. They know they see, if you're depositing cash, you're depositing checks, whatever the case may be. I've seen so many business owners where, because of that frequency, and let's say, one of your clients, the check bounces or something, something goes wrong, right? They know they have that relationship. It's not just a transaction at that point. They see, they know, they notice, when you haven't been there, that type of thing. If you come up with some type of regular cadence to engage the team at your particular bank, it makes a huge difference. I've talked to business owners, but for that relationship, they really would not have been able to navigate some of the challenges. And the fact that they know that you're applying for this loan, if you are behind on credit card payments that you may have with the bank, and they know that you're working through this and that you're being proactive, as I said earlier, that in and of itself, may buy you a few days in terms of, being able to get things processed, maybe deferring payments, some other things that may have to happen. So don't take that 5 minutes, once a month, once a week for granted. It can really be beneficial.
It can. So one person on the chat is asking, what if you haven't filed your 2018 taxes yet? Can you still apply?
Now that becomes a little bit more of a challenge. It's going to depend on the bank and how much money you're looking for. If you haven't filed it, and you haven't made any type of arrangement with IRS, so there's no circumstances like that, it may become a little bit challenging for you, particularly if you're an independent contractor, because it's going to become more difficult to prove what your payroll is. So that will definitely be an issue. I would suggest going and talking with someone at the Small Business Development Center to see what you do have that you can show to prove that you've got that you've had income. But without filing your 2018 taxes, it is going to be a difficult task to get the Paycheck Protection Program. Most banks are going to require, or lending institutions are going to require, that documentation to try to validate what your payroll is like. Right.
Someone else asked, why do you think that larger companies were not prepared to even last 3 months without having revenue coming in? And if they could not, is it realistic for smaller companies to be able to? Go ahead. No, you go.
Yeah, I think that, you're absolutely right. I think a lot of larger companies, as most business owners and a lot of the larger companies that I spoke with, I don't think any of us ever prepared for absolutely having zero income. It's very, again, most people prepare and look at, whether it's an earthquake or some other type of natural disaster, where there is obviously a decrease, in the amount of income. But to go to absolute zero overnight, I don't think anyone necessarily prepared for it. I think, again, it depends on industry to industry and in terms of how they do that. And I think some of those companies have not taken the time to look at some of the other things. A lot of it is timing and where they were in their business journey. I think some companies were having some challenges prior to the pandemic that we're seeing that may have also led to them having a much more difficult time trying to survive during this time period. And I also think that a lot of the larger companies, and if you say companies, particularly if you're in certain industries, I think that's what hit more so than anything else. I mean, if you look at restaurants and things like that where, that's their bread and butter, and where you've got a stay-at-home order where people cannot come to your location.
Right.
Nobody has ever prepared for that. Most folks look at, again, if there's a fire or something like that where it happens, well, you have fire insurance that kind of navigates that. So there's stopgap measures in place, but there really wasn't a measure in place to navigate this scenario going forward. And I think, small businesses, and independent contractors got hit the same way. And certainly I think that was one of the reasons why it was important that in the CARES Act, they included independent contractors and nonprofit organizations that provide so many different services, 501c3s that provide services to the community. Because traditionally, SBA doesn't usually get into that space, particularly on the nonprofit side. And so we had to do that because we recognize that businesses of all sizes were not prepared to deal with a pandemic situation. We go through flu season, we do those types of things, but not a pandemic.
Right. Because this was worse than 2008.
Oh, yes. This was there. This was definitely there. This is a totally different landscape. You can't completely different.
Woo. Yeah, we thought
go ahead.
Those of us who lived through 2008 thought it couldn't get any worse. But
exactly. And just look at, you thought, and I'm dating myself, but, I thought when after 9/11, flying shortly thereafter, I thought that was probably the most odd scenario I've ever seen in terms of airports being empty and people not flying. But the flying now, although it's beginning to recover now, but if you have been flying or had to fly anytime in March, April, and probably up until about the last couple of weeks in May, airports and airplanes, they are not exaggerating. They were absolutely positively empty. And I am confident that the airline industry was not prepared for just a complete shutdown. Whether you're in the private sector, whether you're in government, non-essential travel, vacation, all of that went away. Overnight. Right. People were canceling things left and right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I missed out on a Swedish vacation, an Italian vacation, and a trip to Skiathos, Greece. All of that got canceled.
All of it, exactly.
All of it got canceled. So, I am famous I work with a lot of freelancers. I'm a business development coach. I work with a lot of freelancers. And one of the things that I tell them is save for a rainy season. Do not save for a rainy day. People say save for a rainy day. That's 3 months. 3 months will get you almost nothing nowadays. So when you think about, if you're looking ahead at businesses going forward, what would you say is a reasonable amount of money for these small businesses to be putting away? I've always said, I've been telling people for the last 10 years, you need to have 9 to 12 months in the bank.
Exactly. There is, to the extent you possibly can, and I know it's difficult, particularly if you are an independent contractor or self-employed. But what I would say is, and what I often hear a lot of our folks saying, what I tell folks is, get to that, to where exactly what you said, Crystal, get to that. But start with, setting a goal at 6 months. See if you can get to that 6 month period and then build upon that. But, kind of use that 6 month cushion, if you will, as a foundation, and then start to build upon that. That would be the approach I would take, because it is difficult. And I reckon, particularly right now, it's going to be difficult. That's one of the reasons why there were a lot of deferred payments and things like that banks were trying to do. And then even with SBA, we extended it out. Originally, it was just a 1 year term on the non-forgiveness portion, and we extended it out because we recognize that people are going to need to have much less debt, or a smaller amount of debt that they can spread out over a longer period of time to help you with your cash flow, to help you with that savings, so you can get to that 9 to 12 months is where you want to get to. But start with 6. You got to, plan. As you plan and project your business and do your financial planning, start with 6 months at a minimum as a basis. Because 3 months, I mean, you said it best, Crystal, 3 months is good. And I don't want to, discourage anybody that has 3 months. But at the end of the day, with the way that things are moving and the things that happen in our, across our community and across industries, you got to have 6. You really do need to have 6 and ultimately 9 to 12 months so that you can help to navigate things that may pop up, such as pandemics, but other things that can come up that will really help you to sustain your business, your clients, as well as your colleagues. Right.
So let's circle back around to the person that hasn't filed their 2018 taxes. Would you then advise that if they can handle that and get those taxes filed and in a couple of days and still be able to apply, that's the best way for them to do that?
Yes, that's if you can go and get your taxes filed and get caught up, particularly 18. I'm not as concerned about that since it's not due till July. You have some that you don't have to worry about. But if you have not done 18, absolutely. If you can get that filed, then yes, I would certainly do that, and you can then leverage that to move forward.
Okay. So does the government have a contingency in the event that we have a resurgence of COVID-19 along with flu season? Is there a plan B for that?
So they are in negotiations, as you know. We're on what? Probably the 4th legislative action as it relates to the response to this. And there's obviously ongoing conversation. I know that many of the congressional members have contacted our office to look at, what do we do going forward? How to not only do we help continue to support the recovery for small businesses, that's usually what they talk with me about, but also, what do we do if we get some spikes or flu season or whatever may happen come fall or come, a little bit later on towards the end of the calendar year. So there's still communications about that. Is it all etched out and written down in stone? Absolutely not. But is there dialogue? Absolutely. There's absolutely dialogue to it. And to that point, look at a lot of your local folks as well, not just the federal government. I know there's certain state programs that are out there. Some cities have some programs out there as well as counties. It may not be exactly the Paycheck Protection Program, but is absolutely a resource that I encourage people to take a look at. There's nothing against having, as I call it, multiple sources of income and multiple resources and sources for help. So there is nothing that necessarily would prevent you from applying for some type of city grant or county grant where you're located, even though you may be getting the Paycheck Protection Program. So look at those as well.
Right. Tracy, I see you there, and I hope that this last bit of conversation answered your question. If not, and you have another question, please go ahead and put it back in the chat, and I will get right to you immediately. I'm looking here. I mean, Victor, you've done a fabulous job. You've just done a fabulous job by answering all these questions. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience today? Because I'm just really thrilled with what we got to today in terms of helping all of these salon owners, barbers, salon stylists that are out here in the audience today. And Tracy said that was perfect. Thank you. Woo!
Woo! All right, there we go. Yeah, that's the objective is to get answers. Again, I just want to make sure. I just don't want anybody to disqualify themselves. I know it can be discouraging. I know that we are under so much pressure on all the different things that are going on in our communities. We're trying to take care of our families. But because you may be freelancing, there are all kinds of things. The salon, has been closed for several days. You may take you a little while longer to get open, depending on where you're located. But absolutely, put your name in the hat for this funding. far too often we take for granted some of these programs and just kind of assume that we can't apply for them, and that is just absolutely not true. And I really want you all to take advantage of some of these community banks and some of the CDFIs that we referenced earlier. These institutions as well. They are really a tremendous resource. We have gone through the process of adding those additional banks, in addition to the banks that we already had, to open up and cast a wider net so that you don't have to worry about it. So if you go to your bank and your bank is not accepting applications, or they're not a PPP lender, maybe they're not a Paycheck Protection Program lender, they're not an approved SBA lender, that's okay. Let's find you a lender that is accepting applications, that is doing that, and at least have the conversation. I think it's worth having the conversation. It shouldn't take long to figure out whether you're, eligible, and whether you have the necessary documentation to qualify and to meet the underwriting standards. And I really want to encourage people to do that. And then the other piece of it is, please be mindful of predatory lenders. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people that are trying to take advantage of folks out there right now. And I just really don't want, as we're moving fast and furious as a community to get things reopened, and many of our salons and barbershops really are the pillars of our community in many instances. And so I think it's just important that we provide you all with all the support we can. But I don't want you all to do that at the expense of navigating a predatory lender, or having to work your way out of a predatory lender, because it's very difficult to do. So please be very, very mindful of that, and do reach out to SBA, particularly if it's a Paycheck Protection Program, just to make sure that it's actually a valid lender if you have any doubt in your mind. I mean, any doubt at all. And then lastly, go back to those SBDCs, those small business development centers and women's business centers that I referenced before, in your local communities, because they will have access to and be aware of some other different programs that are available. I know that some cities and counties are providing even small grants just to put directional signing or create new signage that says, whatever your new policy might be. And all those types of things are helpful as we try to, pivot and reopen our businesses throughout the community and throughout the country. All the resources that you can take advantage of to help you do that as quickly and as efficiently as possible will be really a tremendous benefit. And, stay strong, stay healthy, stay safe. I know it's a lot to try to protect not only yourselves and your families, but again, your assistants, the other stylists that work in the shop with you. I know it sounds cliche at this point, but we really are all in this together. And I think that community unity is going to be just so critical as we go forward over the course of the next several months.
That is so awesome. So let me just say to everyone, for those of you who came in later, when Victor was talking about predatory lenders, the litmus test for that a lot of times is, number one, people are reaching out to you out of the clear blue sky. And number two, they're asking you for money in order to help you process your application. And one of the things that Victor said early on was, nobody should be asking you for any money to help you with your application. So buyer beware. If somebody's asking you for money, that's not the person that you should be talking to. Is that right, Victor?
Absolutely. That's absolutely it. So, just err on the side of caution. It's fine. We're happy we can access the system and find out whether or not that particular lending institution has an actual valid Paycheck Protection Program agreement, and then you can move forward. I mean, it won't take long. Like I said, our folks, our offices are open. Many of them are teleworking still, depending on where they're located. But email and phone is working, and we can certainly get that information for you.
And as we're closing out today, Victor, I don't think that enough of us in our community actually take advantage of what the SBA has to offer. And when we talk about moving forward, doing better planning with our businesses, taking the same kind of care with our businesses that we do personally with things that you mentioned, like insurance and those kinds of things, maybe you could just share how the SBA could be instrumental in helping people to get their businesses set up better. So the next time something like this happens, getting help from the SBA is easy because the SBA has helped you set up your business perhaps more professionally, or helped you to set it up so that you can take advantage of more resources that the SBA has to offer.
That's a very good point. And I know I've said it 100 times, but I think it's really bears repeating. Going forward, we fund small business development centers and women's business centers all across the country. Every state has several of them. And these folks are not only there to help you with loan applications, they actually can help you set up a business plan. They can actually help you set up a marketing plan, teach you how to use social media. These are workshops and trainings that are free. They cost you nothing. Many of them, and of course, now a lot of them are online. And so you can engage with these folks on a regular basis. And these are really your silent partners. These are your free consultants. SBA, we've already paid for it. We funded those folks. So there's not a charge for these workshops in most cases, unless there's some kind of parking or something of that nature. There's really no charge for the content in and of itself. And it is a way to help you kind of plan how to grow your business, and make you take a step back. And actually look at what's the next thing for you in your business. What do you need to do to make sure that you're staying current with your industry, making sure that you're setting aside the right amount of money so you can plan for disasters. What are the other things that you can do to better engage and market your particular business? And they also have other resources to local programming, local things that are happening that can help you. Again, like I referenced before, there may be some county programs. I know there's some grants that are out there in certain cities where they, if you're located in a certain part of town, they will pay for new signage, for example, for your shop, for example, and you can get that done for free. So leverage these folks as resources to help you take your business to the next level. Help you manage your funds, put you in contact with the right folks. And in most cases, they can also help you if you haven't really developed that relationship with the lender as well, because most of those small business development centers and women's business centers, they know the lenders in the area. They know the lenders that are providing SBA programs and services through their lending institutions. And we've got some smaller loans. You don't have to think about, well, I really only need a small loan. I only need $10,000. SBA has a micro loan program that goes up to $50,000. And I think the average size of a micro loan, even pre-COVID-19, was $14,000. And in most cases, let's be realistic, the bigger banks, they're probably not going to do a loan for $14,000. We understand that. But that's why we have programs designed to help you do that. So there's a micro loan program. There's another program called Community Advantage that goes up to $250,000. So we have these smaller loan dollar volume programs designed specifically for independent contractors and for sole proprietors. And so starting with a microloan program is a good way to start building your business credit. Far too often as independent contractors, we kind of rely on our own credit and really don't do a very good job of maybe separating it out as best as we could. And so that's another resource that will help you do that. And starting with some of these smaller loan programs, and you can graduate from the micro loan to the Community Advantage. And ultimately, what I want to see is all of you move right into your actual capital program where you can actually buy the building. I want you all to own the shop and the building that the shop is in. That's where we need to go. And I think those are the programs that we've got that are moving in that direction. And so I encourage you to take advantage of that, because if we can do more of that, you'll see a lot of growth in our community, and it'll be something that we will all be able to leverage and move forward with.
Right. So here's our last question of the morning for you and the evening for me. And it's Tammy Kozier, and she says, what advice can you give someone who's considering an EIDL, and what are key things to consider?
You know what? We did not touch on that. So real quickly, because I know we're running short on time. So EIDL stands for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. So that was the original loan that SBA put out in many cases based on the state declaring a disaster, and that has to be approved through the SBA. So there's some differences with that, and I'm going to go through them really quickly. So first of all, every state now has been declared. So every state is eligible for an economic injury disaster loan. The difference with the economic injury disaster loan is that is a loan directly through the SBA. You do not have to go to a SBA lender to get the economic injury disaster loan. That is a loan that is directly funded. It is underwritten. Everything is done at SBA. If you are still interested in the economic injury disaster loan, you can apply online. It is primarily designed to take a look at, what economic injury you have suffered from your business as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. It is very specific to the pandemic, and it is very specific to the loss that you would have from your shop being closed. So I would leverage whatever projections you have, because in many instances, it's very difficult to show what that injury would be for certain businesses. I think it's pretty simple to understand that, the shop has been closed, but you want to have the documentation to prove the numbers. And that's going to be the key to demonstrate what that financial impact was as a result of the shop being closed. You can submit those through the portal. Now, the portal will be reopened. I believe it is next week. I don't have it in front of me for all businesses. I know that because there were certain industries that were shut out for a while, that the portal was shut off for those folks who had not applied for the economic injury disaster loan. But that should be reopening shortly. So please be on the lookout. There will probably be a press release coming out from SBA, but you can always go to the SBA.gov website, and they will give you the latest information on when to do that. Again, our small business development centers and women's business centers, and even our SCORE chapters as well, have been trained, and they understand what's going on with the economic injury disaster loan. It is not managed through the district offices, so it's not managed through the offices that I oversee, but it's managed by our separate Office of Disaster Assistance. My folks can still help you, but the Office of Disaster Assistance manage that entire portfolio of loans. So it is a good program to look at. Up to $10,000 of it is forgivable. The good news about the economic injury disaster loan is that it is over a 30-year period. So if you do apply for that loan and you are funded, you can actually spread those payments out over a 30-year period. So you can make them as affordable as you need to, and as much time as you need to make sure that, you have time to recover your business. So that is very helpful. Now, the interest rate is a little bit higher. So for businesses, it's 3.75%. If you happen to be a nonprofit organization, it's 2.75%. But again, you can spread that out over a 30-year period. So it is a business decision. You can also, while I've got you all, you can apply for both. So there's nothing that prohibits you from applying for the Paycheck Protection Program and applying for the economic injury disaster loan. However, you can't use the proceeds for payroll in both scenarios. So the use of proceeds you would have to separate out. But I would still encourage you, again, if you use all of your Paycheck Protection Program money directly for your payroll as a self-employed person, then I would use the economic injury loan to navigate paying your rent, perhaps paying utilities that you had to pay for, any new signage or any new requirements that you may need to put up as you reopen your business, things like that. I would use the economic injury disaster loan for, and focus your Paycheck Protection money strictly on payroll. You can't use both of those loans for payroll, because then that is a duplication in services, and so we'd have to separate that out. But it's certainly something that's manageable, and certainly don't want to discourage anybody from applying for both.
Victor, I could keep you on here all day.
I can stay here all day. Yeah, I've been living and breathing the stuff. And so I know I know there's other things going on today, but I certainly encourage you all, if you have additional questions that we didn't get to, please reach out to your local SBA district office. If you have questions about any of the SBA programs, we are certainly here to make sure you have all the information, because more importantly, we want you all to stay healthy, stay safe, and make an informed decision on how to bring your business back as we navigate this COVID-19 pandemic.
Victor, thank you so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful day in LA. What is the weather like today?
It is sunny, and I think we're going to be probably at 75, 80 degrees. So it is a nice day. And so we can put our mask on and we can go take a walk and do some great things. Shouldn't be too humid. So I'm looking forward to having a good day. It's still early here, so we're getting wound up and ready to go.
Wonderful. Enjoy my town. Enjoy my town. I'm going to look you up the next time I come to LA after the pandemic. Have
Absolutely.
a great day. We appreciate you so much, and thank you.
Thank you. Stay safe, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.